Well, I've just got a couple items to share with you, and then we can respond to your questions. So first, welcome to the briefing of the Montgomery County Council. Tomorrow at the council, we will be having a discussion with Paul Wiedefeld, the general manager of WMATA. And we're very eager to begin discussion with Metro about the vision for investing in capital improvements in Metro. And Montgomery County was a lead player in pushing for the regional funding solution. And we are very, very happy that that funding solution has been put into place. And now we can begin to talk about what kind of improvements are most needed in Montgomery County. And really, we want to ensure that the county is in the driver's seat, so to speak, for pressing for these improvements. And some of the ideas that we'll be discussing tomorrow with Mr. Wiedefeld are mentioned in the packet, but we have had a long-standing priority to improve the Forest Glen Metro station, one of the most dangerous intersections in Montgomery County. Prevents a lot of people from using Metro out of fear from getting hit by a car trying to get there. And this year in our capital budget, one of the steps that the council rallied behind was to begin funding improvements to that station to promote pedestrian safety, and we'd like to work with WMATA to fully fund those. And the same goes for the White Flint Station. White Flint Station is right in the heart of one of the future economic hubs of the county, present and future. But it's in a place where we're really trying to build a very strong office market, as well as continue the growth in our retail and residential markets. And we need a White Flint Metro station that, is a true urban station that has multiple points of access, that is a quick walk to where people want to be. And so again, in this year's capital budget, the council rallied to begin funding planning for the White Flint Station, an additional entrance or an underpass underneath Rockville Pike. And we would like to talk to WMATA about partnering with us on that. Another longstanding issue for Montgomery County has been the turnbacks. And we were very, very happy that Metro eliminated the turnbacks on the Shady Grove side of the Red Line this year. But we were disappointed that they were not able to end those turnbacks on the Glenmont side. And now we can get back to the table and start talking about how to add rail cars. And we had heard that that was their real explanation, was that rail cars, there weren't sufficient rail cars to eliminate the turnbacks through Silver Spring and Wheaton and up to Glenmont. And so now that there's funding, we can hopefully get to the table and figure out the timeline to eliminate the Glenmont turnbacks. And in general, to get headways to 3 minutes. That's our goal. We want Montgomery County to have a train every 3 minutes. We want 8-car trains, and we can add so much rider capacity into the county, and I think really help achieve what the system wants, which is to become once again a reliable, frequently used transportation choice. You're also familiar about our letter to WMATA about the Riders Advisory Council. I intend to suggest that we create a Montgomery County Riders Council as well, as opposing the elimination of the Systems Riders Council. I think it's time for us to do a better job engaging Montgomery County residents in Metro and the dialogue about the future of the system, and help to keep county officials in closer touch with what people who ride Metro in this county are looking for from the system. And so I intend to propose that. And that's our Metro set of issues. Just a brief comment about the very, very serious incident with the young man who was obviously very disturbed and had threatened to commit an act of mass violence at Walter Johnson High School. Certainly what comes to mind is there's several groups of students here who are really the heroes of this case. The first are those who saw these threats on social media and reported them. They talked to their campus police officer, their SRO, and they alerted them in a timely manner, enabling the police department to apprehend this individual. But also the kids who have taken up the banner of marching for gun safety. And when they say that this is the march for their lives, this is what they're talking about. They are talking about how unfortunate and how easy it is for a disturbed person to get an assault rifle and begin plans to commit a mass atrocity. And apparently this young man has pictures of himself with an AR-15 on social media. Why does he have an AR-15? It is an outrage that anyone can get a hold of a weapon like this and threaten our kids, and they know it, and they're fighting for gun control and gun safety reforms. And I think it just brings home how urgent it is what they're doing and how this country needs to listen to them and understand that what they want is to feel safe at school. And we know that part of that solution is things like hardening campuses. We know that, but those are just Band-Aids to the disease. The disease is the proliferation of weapons and guns, and we need to deal with that problem, and nothing is going to change until we actually deal with the true problem. The final issue I want to raise is small cells, and tomorrow the council will be taking up again the proposed zoning change that will address issues about the deployment of wireless infrastructure. And again, I will just restate, this county has always been at the forefront of wireless infrastructure. When you turn your phone on here, for the most part, it works. You get a great signal. You can do whatever you want to do with your phone or with your laptop. You have access to what the market has to offer with wireless. And that is not going to be the case if we don't change our zoning code, because right now wireless infrastructure, that the next generation of wireless infrastructure is not allowed by our zoning code, particularly in the residential areas. And residential areas are essential for wireless. If you want to work from home one day a week or any day of the week, if you want to have a future for video 911, a lot of 911 calls come from residential neighborhoods. If you want to have a future for this country with automated vehicles, these are just a few of the examples of how wireless is the future. And the council will be taking this up, and I certainly hope that a majority of the council will embrace the future and help make the changes that we need to make to ensure that this county continues to offer what it has offered in the past, which is the best of what the market has to offer in wireless communications. Those are my prepared remarks. Questions from the press?
Why did you sign the letter about not wanting to eliminate the Writers Advisory Council?
Because I do not want to eliminate the Writers Advisory Council. Yes, I think the Writers Advisory Council is important. I think generally speaking, what's happening right now is people are feeling like the voice of the writer, the consumer, needs to be heard. And one of the big discussions that's going on right now, as you saw in the press this week, is this whole question of when will Metro return to a full-service system. Right now people are really turning away from it for weekend service or late-night service. And I understand the issue about track maintenance at late night and why they need to shut down the system at night in order to do an aggressive track maintenance program. But I think what we want to hear from Metro's leadership is a very firm commitment that they will return the system to a full-service system. And it's not going to be a daytime Metro system. We're going to have a weekend and night service system as well. And right now we've heard some concerning comments from Metro board members, and we want to engage them on that topic as well. But we think the voice of the writers is partly part of the solution, and we want to see them continue to embrace that voice.
If I could ask another question, where did you hear, or who told you that the reason that you didn't immediately engage the idea of I'm not sure, the Glenmont Silver Spring course?
Yeah.
Turn back?
What was the rationale for why they were not able to make the Glenmont, to run all the trains to Glenmont? Glenn Orland can probably help answer that, but it's our understanding that the availability of cars was a big part of that.
They didn't exactly tell I don't remember them telling the media that's all. I might have missed it.
Okay.
It's the availability of cars and the operating costs of running all those trains.
Right. Operating costs certainly substantial, that as well.
Sure.
Michael?
Are there any early ideas, I'm sorry if you mentioned this, but you said Montgomery County is own variation on the Riders Council to better engage here locally. Are there any early ideas about how, would that also be 21 person committee like the RAC, or how might those people apply and be chosen, or is it still too early for those kind of details?
It's a little early for those kind of details. This is a new idea that I'm formulating, and it's been my experience here at the council that we could do a better job inviting Montgomery County residents who care about Metro to have a forum to participate. And so I think that we ought to create a structure for them to come together and for the county to hear from them, because again, I think we want Montgomery County to be a strong voice in the future of Metro. And if we're going to drive that, then we need to have a process to be in touch with the community and where people are in this county on these issues. So, what is the appropriate way for us to hear from people, I think, is the question that we have to ask ourselves. If Montgomery County wants to have a stronger voice on Metro, how are we going to do that? And we do that by engaging people in the community and listening to them and working with them and working together.
An idea where it might meet? Sorry.
No, sorry. It's a very fresh idea. You're in on something very exciting and new here, but sometimes the details haven't been fully vetted. Dan?
On the small cells ETA, has there been any further developments with the FCC preemption ruling, or any further guidance the council has gotten that would change your plans?
Well, the only we are continuing to. We know that we're hoping that we will be able to challenge it in the Ninth Circuit. So an immediate process will be, apparently there's a lottery for what circuit your challenge will be heard in, and that is sort of imminent. But we are joining with other local governments to challenge the order, and that will be proceeding over the next several weeks. And again, as our team has said, for us to have our own zoning ordinance in place allows it to be evidence in our argument that the federal action is arbitrary and unnecessary because the local government is capable of handling the solution. So I do think that's yet another good argument for why, even if you don't necessarily feel great about the future of wireless, you want us to pass a strong ordinance that can stand up in court.
Which other local governments?
Unfortunately, I don't know if that is known, but not necessarily by me. Our attorneys in this case would be BB&K, which is one of the best known consumer communications law firms in the country, and we have filed suits in the past with them. So I can follow up with you and get that information.
What amendments are being offered tomorrow on that bill? What is the final bill going to look like?
Well, there's a few amendments. I believe they're in the packet, and there may be some more. So you might want to look at that. Some of them, I think, essentially would result in preventing the deployment of networks in the county. There's no question that some of the amendments proposed would completely block the intent of the legislation in the first place, which is to come up with a rational approach that allows deployment and responds to residents' concerns.
Would 60 feet setback be one of them?
a hard law that's a hard line that said 60 feet is required would absolutely prevent the deployment of networks in Montgomery County, because there aren't enough poles in the county that are 60 feet in order to actually deploy a network. Just briefly go back to the previous question. There are 40 jurisdictions that are signing up, including Boston, Los Angeles, Las Vegas, Chicago, Portland, DC, Dallas, Atlanta, San Jose. So we're one of the leaders in the world of local governments, and that's where we need to stay. But again, back to your comment, Doug, a hard 60-foot requirement would, as the maps have shown, not leave sufficient poles in the county for a network to be deployed. So we would be in a position where we would say we've got an ordinance, but it doesn't actually allow for a network to be deployed, and that would really be unwise, and it would run counter to the intent of federal law, and it would ensure that we don't get the future of wireless in Montgomery County unless we are preempted, which I think that a 60-foot requirement would be a case, it would be evidence for the jury that local government is not up to the task.
You have the votes.
We'll see. I think there are enough council members who, want to look forward and not remain stuck in the mud. So we'll see.
Is it?
Everything is close at the county council until it passes unanimously. All right.
Anybody else?
So the possible Montgomery Riders Advisory Council, would that have any leaning toward bus or rail or?
Oh yeah, definitely. Bus and rail.
Okay.
Yeah. Bus is a major part of the story. I mean, we have a real desire to see Metro build out its priority corridors network program in the county, which is its enhanced bus service. And that is in our county priority letter to the state. In other words, our expression of our priorities to the state is for them to work with us on priority corridors network, the Metro Bus Rapid Transit program. And we'd like to see that move forward. So I do think that's a huge piece of the puzzle. And Metro provides bus service, as you know, in all the major arterials in the county, just because that's the way it works out. So, we need them to have an aggressive vision. And they have a whole bus transformation project that they're embarking upon. And we need to be working together with them, because if you're going to transform bus service in the county, it's going to be Metro and Ride-On working together.
Do you or other council members have any plans to be in communication with Montgomery County Transportation Department? Because I believe they're involved in
Oh, yeah.
transformation.
Definitely, yeah.
Okay, and then, so Metro's been putting out reports saying, guys, look, our reliability is improving. Like, do you hear any comments from riders? I realize you're not on the committee, but.
Well, I mean, what I hear from people is that the daytime commute is better, but that, there are still issues, and that the off-peak is a major gap in the coverage now. And I can certainly share, even from personal experience, that the decision that you make about whether to ride Metro on the weekend is, it's kind of like it feels like a leap of faith to even give it a shot. And I think that's one of the reasons most of the loss of ridership is not peak. So hopefully they'll get all the peak ridership back as they complete their capital improvements. But the room for growth is going to be not only in peak in the future, but getting people back in the habit of riding Metro and having it be a default choice. And unfortunately, I think the impact of all of the construction work and the reduction of headways has just taken many people out of the habit.
Mm-hmm. So during Safe Track, I believe Council Nancy Florine and other county government people encourage people to consider telework during Safe Track. what plans might the county have, or the council even, to encourage people to,
To telework? Yeah,
Well,
it's one of the reasons why we need 5G, so you can telework in the future.
well, I'm sorry, what I meant to say was to, now that Safe Track is over, to maybe telework less often or something like that?
No, we would definitely want them to telework more often rather than less. Oh, you mean as a way of increasing ridership? Well, we think telework is an incredibly crucial part of the future of transportation in the county, and reducing vehicle trips, is the overriding important policy goal, and so telework supports that. And so, there are many motivations that people might have to explore telework or try to do more of it. Certainly, the Safe Track was one of them, but there's more. So, we would hope that people will continue, and that employers will continue to support more telework. Yes.
I'm sorry, bouncing back to small cells. How will the bill decide where the antennas go? Will the residents will they get any kind of notice, and will they be able to present reasons on why it doesn't belong where they?
Right. So one of the amendments that we discussed last week would require a notice for antennas that are going on existing poles where they're just being attached to a utility pole or attached to a street light, and it would require notice. That is a different scenario than those parts of the county that don't have that have underground utilities. Neighborhoods that have underground utilities, they're still hearing. So the answer to your question is, in communities that don't have existing utilities above ground, there will continue to be a hearing process for those communities. And new poles have hearings, right, Jeff? Isn't that right? So anytime there's a new pole, there would be a hearing requirement. And at that point, residents can say, we don't want it here, or we think it'd be better in someone else's, in front of someone else's house, or whatever it is that they intend to say. But I do think that negotiation process is very important, because that's when the county can get to the table and say, well, actually, we think you can serve this neighborhood by putting up, maybe a slightly taller pole at the main road, and you'll be able to reach in here. And that will happen. That negotiation process will help us to minimize the impact of deployment. And that is an essential county function through this.
And places where there are already utility poles, what happens there?
Well, in places where there are already, we do have, I might have to turn that to Jeff a little bit, but when we are establishing rules where it is by right, so you can put up an antenna on a utility pole as long as you conform to the standards that are in this zoning change. We believe that the companies are not going to put up more equipment than they need, because that would be wasting their money, and they have a strong incentive not to waste their own money. So many people have raised that question. They've said, this is going to allow companies to put stuff up everywhere, and we believe that the companies will put up the minimum infrastructure necessary to build a network.
Is there reason to believe that the poles that exist are strong enough to handle essentially the size of a refrigerator?
Well, it's not that big.
20 feet?
Maybe
Yeah, I mean, the weight is about 300 pounds if it has all of the equipment and the antennas, and the wooden utility poles are strong enough, but in most instances they would need to be replaced to be taller. There are no county equipment, that is street lights or street signals, that could carry that equipment, and they would all need to be replacement poles.
And because it's a replacement pole, does that mean it's a new pole, therefore
Yes.
there's a hearing, or?
If it's under 22 feet, which means in a residential area, in a place that doesn't have wooden utility poles, that would be a hearing. If it's a 22 feet or larger, which means the Cobra type lights or a wooden pole, those would be allowed as a limited use without a hearing.
how's somebody supposed to know what a pole 22 feet tall or not?
Basically, it's the bigger Cobra-looking lights, the ones that
I'm sorry?
arch over. It's a, there's
What you would call a street light typically, what you would think of as a street light typically,
Okay.
is a taller light. The lights that are shorter are, I think, call them like light fixtures almost. They are very lanterns. They're aesthetically designed, small scale, lighting in neighborhoods, and they look nice. I mean, they are attractive, and those are the ones that I think are much more challenging as to how are you going to have an installation that respects what the visual experience is like in that neighborhood. And so in those communities, we have preserved the hearing process, and that will allow us to, I think, be more thoughtful about the installations. I think in general, as you can see out there, one of those large steel poles gets replaced, it looks pretty similar to what you see there, except for there's an additional few feet on top with an antenna. So it's not a huge change.
Pepco pays for some of the lampposts in the county. Would they have any connection to the?
Oh, they're very involved, because the utility poles are often Pepco poles. So the wireless companies will actually be working with the utility companies on what they're doing.
Okay, I just wanted to go back to sort of like what you were saying on having wireless connections in the area. Kind of on that vein, Metro has been broadcasting or talking about the fact that they now have Wi-Fi in several of their stations, therefore improving rider experience.
Yeah.
Do you,
Well, I think that's a positive thing. I think ultimately we want to have wireless service throughout Metro. So I think that's a move in the right direction, and yeah, it's good.
Some writers are saying on social media, just run more trains. This is
Yeah.
just like a gimmick. Can you just not?
Well, I mean, I think that on the one hand, I think folks are saying we need to get the basics right. That we need frequent trains that run on time, and they aren't satisfied yet that exists. On the other hand, the problem is we don't have enough revenue to support frequent trains. So if you want more revenue in the system to run more frequent trains, one of the options is to allow more partnerships to raise revenue. And wireless service is an example. There's been other talk about allowing, Starbucks in the stations, or near the stations, I should say, not in the stations. Things like that. I think WMATA needs to be looking at all options to raise revenue so that we can increase service. No question about it.
So you support the food idea?
All I say is I'll support ideas that bring more revenue so we can run more trains on time.
Okay.
And I'm sorry if you mentioned this before, but Sydney Katz has legislation that you guys are going to revisit tomorrow regarding the smoking on the patio situation. That's gonna.
Public hearing tomorrow.
Okay, good. And you're expecting to hear a lot from a lot of different people about that.
Well, right now we only have a handful of people, 9 people, is that? Okay, so it's picking up. We think it'll pick up. At the moment we have 9 people. I haven't looked through the list of witnesses, so I have no real observation about that. But
And that's based off something that he'd already seen done in Gaithersburg that was similar. So you think?
It was
So
Rockville,
do you?
I think.
Or Rockville.
oh, it's Gaithersburg? Gaithersburg.
In Rockville.
We have a disagreement about that.
Do you have any? I mean, do you have an opinion on the smoking situation? Obviously a lot of people still light up.
Yeah, I think that anything we can do to reduce smoking, we should. And I wish that we could do more, frankly. I think there's some state preemptions that are very problematic. I wish we could ban flavored vaping, for example. I think what's happening right now is that a lot of kids are actually getting started with nicotine, who previously had turned away from smoking and suddenly now they're juuling because they've heard it's cool, and they're starting to get addicted to nicotine through vaping, and all of the flavored products are enticing them in. And I think the tide has turned, and now they're creating new smokers essentially through vaping. And so I'm pleased with the legislation we passed previously that said basically we won't treat vaping differently than smoking. Wherever smoking is banned, vaping is banned. And I think that we ought to look at every measure we can to kind of turn the tide on smoking and help people quit, and help people never start. So the outdoor ban, I think, is a reasonable step. You know, I'm always annoyed when I go to a restaurant and someone's lighting up at a table near me. And I guess I have the zeal of the converted. I smoked for 20 years, and it's a horrible thing, and I'll probably pay a price. You know, and I've got many family members, several family members who have died of cancer from smoking. So it's terrible, and we gotta help people stop.
Very good. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.